What is up, guys? Welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I am Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. I am here in Portland, Oregon. I flew up here after the Pelicans season opener, got up on Thursday, and made the long slog up here. It takes a while to get to the Pacific Northwest from New Orleans. Happy to be here. Happy to be in the building for what ended up being a nice win for the Pelicans on Friday night. It wasn't always pretty, but they did what they needed to do. We're going to talk about the Pelicans being 2-0. We're going to talk about Brandon Ingram's game winner, Zion's debut, Dejounte Murray getting hurt in his first game with the Pelicans, one of the most Pelicans thing that has ever happened in how long has this franchise existed? 23 years. I mean, just one of the most Pelicans things that's ever happened. I'm joined as always by my friend here, Adam McCurry. How you feeling, buddy?
I'm pretty excited. While we did have the most Pelicans opening to the season, we also just had something happen that might happen once a year, and it happened right after that. So you win some, you lose some, and we're on a seesaw, we're on a roller coaster already, and it's game two.
I want to get into look, they're 2-0. That's good. They've got a chance to go to 3-0 Sunday. They very well might do it. I can't get over Dejounte Murray fracturing his left hand in the fourth quarter of the Pelicans' first game, a game in which, while he didn't shoot the ball very well, I thought he played a really nice game. He did everything else you needed him to do. He controlled the offense. It looked pretty organized for the most part. This vision that the Pelicans had of we're going to turn other teams over, the Bulls in this instance, a million times and score in transition, that translated. That part of it looked great. And I mean, I just thought he did everything you wanted him to do, even though he didn't shoot the ball that well. And then, the game's pretty much out of reach. And then he fractures his left hand. We find out, it's going to require surgery. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. I think it's closer to 6 than 4. Probably that's what we're looking at. I asked CJ McCollum a little bit about this, just about injury misfortune in general at practice today, which is at Nike headquarters. And I thought CJ delivered one of the best quotes I've heard in my now 6 seasons covering this team. CJ said, "What did Larry Nance Jr. call us? The bad news pals. Sometimes it's like we can't have nice things. We just don't keep them for long. Just have to take advantage of games you're supposed to win, even when you're playing poorly."
Bro. I don't know whether to smile or cry or feel pain. Yeah, that's what it feels like to be a fan of the Pelicans for the last however many years we've been doing this. Every time you get excited about something, you're waiting for the rug to be pulled out from beneath your feet. You're scared to get too hyped because there's a shoe and it's going to drop. You just don't know when or how. However, we've had a shoe drop and it felt like we were resilient and we had some dudes and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Was it as organized? No. You spoke to the feeling of Dejounte, even though he was missing those shots. Look, he was a real point guard. He made Missi look like a terrifying vertical weapon with the pick and roll. He was playing them like a fiddle. He had the Bulls on a string on a lot of those possessions. And then he had there was a nice decision where the Bulls had charged back. I think Levine had made 2 shots in a row, and Dejounte raced past the defense and saw Kobe White in front of the rim and just said, "I'm just going to take him to the rim because he's going to foul me. He can't stay with me." And so he just ran into him. And even though he's missing the shots, gets to the line. And of course he knocks him down at the free throw line. So
when you say things aren't as bad as they could have been, what is to you as bad as it could have been? I mean, tell me what it is, because this is close to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm saying in terms of what it could have done to destabilize the performance of the team. Normally, you would not have enough weaponry on this team. Normally it would be Z or BI, and then the whole thing's thrown off because CJ's playing point guard and you have too many role players exposed too far. Instead, Missi may as well be like the starter in name because of the impact he's having on the game. So now all of a sudden the 5 is just taken care of. And between Z and BI and CJ, you're cobbling together enough, because this is what we've done before. You're cobbling together enough ball handling and enough distribution to be fine. Oh, and Javonte Green has, like we said on here, just stepped into Najee's role incredibly comfortably. He's a little bit different, but he does the same things. So they fell into like a little bit of a comfort level. They missed a ton of shots. Like it didn't feel great at times. It felt like there were, and realistically there were about 7 times in that Portland game where they were trying to claw back. They were trying to get it down. They get it down from 15 to 7, and then boom, 3 shots in a row and it's back to 15. They get it down to 13, get it all the way down to 3, and it kept bouncing back. Every time Jeremy Grant needed to hit a 3, he just did. He couldn't make anything else. He missed every other shot on the floor, but man, the 3-pointers, they were going down.
Especially early. He wound up taking 17 of them, which is mind blowing. There was a game where Jeremy Grant took 17 threes.
Oh my God. But on my fantasy team where I don't value field goal percentage, so that's great for me.
I don't want to hear about your fantasy team again this season, please.
It's going to happen all year.
I'm done. I need a mute button. I'm gonna give you a 10-second timeout every time I hear my fantasy team.
No, so look, this game was a slog, man. It was tough to watch. The offense was bad for both teams. Defense was like pretty okay for us. We're having a lot of trouble containing drivers when the smaller backcourts are out there. And then we found something though, like right at the end of the second half, we threw a little zone out there. We then waited and used that again in the second half, and Portland can't really shoot. So the zone like killed them. So that worked, and we clawed back, and Zion was a different player in the second half. So do you want to just jump into the game and like hit the major features of the Portland game?
Yeah. Let's get into this Portland game. Before we do and get into the weeds here, we are of course presented by Crescent Canada, New Orleans' #1 cannabis company and the maker of the highly satisfying Crescent 9 THC seltzer. It's uplifting. It's relaxing. It's my favorite drink to sip on while I'm watching Mizzou football get its head bashed in by some SEC bullies. Crescent Canada has 7 THC beverage flavors ranging from the 5 milligrams all the way up to the 50 because it's made with hemp-derived THC. Crescent 9 THC seltzer is legal for adults from coast to coast. It's also registered with the Louisiana Department of Health for compliance in Louisiana. You can get it at crescentcanada.com or in stores, Rouse's, Canseco's, Zapardo's, Total Wine, a whole lot more. You got to be 21 years older to purchase or consume THC products. Consult with your doctor before using any cannabis products. If you have a medical condition or are taking medication. Adam, this Portland game, I was sitting there at halftime in the Moda Center thinking, oh my God, I just watched some terrible offense. They missed shots. They were stagnant. They looked stuck in the mud. It was just ugly from a lot of different directions. Zion looked a half step slow to me, which is understandable considering he missed a couple days with an illness. In the second half, offense came alive a little bit, and I thought one of the ways it did was a second-year guard who I've been hyping up a lot, and I gotta say, I feel like I know ball. Jordan Hawkins is really good. I mean, he's just really good, and he's going to be good. He scored 22 of his 24 points in the second half. I thought he was the guy who sparked them to get back in that game, to put them within striking distance and allow the Pelicans, capital G guys, to help them win the game. It was Hawkins who got them back into that one.
Yeah, so Zion didn't have his offense. This has become a little bit of a telltale thing with him from injuries and illnesses. Like when he's returning, that first game back tends to be a little passive, a little tentative, trying to find himself. Luckily, that started to go away in the second half. In the first half, he was really bad. He was indecisive. He was looking to get rid of the ball. He was, late deciding to take shots. And in the first half, we also we were clearly trying to establish him and Brandon, and then also just take what was given to us. Because of that, there were not many opportunities for Hawkins, who was the dude who was ready for that game. But you saw a little glimpse of that. You saw him working really hard, and you're like, okay, we're staying down. Now, I will say the entire time through the middle of that game, CJ is quietly clawing us through. Just again, like last year, every time you have to have a shot or something backbreaking is about to happen, CJ finds a way. And he's just doing that dirty part of the game the whole way through, steals, turnovers, and whatnot. But once they found the zone, helped with defense, helped settle him down. They found a little glimpse of Hawkins, and we're like, okay, maybe we should be drawing up offense for Hawkins. They found an entire secondary offense around Hawkins in motion. And all of a sudden, we started to see guys get to spots. BI was also just stepping into threes every time they left him open, which was a huge help. That him and Hawkins are what kept us afloat. But Hawkins really, as you started getting down the stretch of that game, we were running plays for him finally. And to Willie's credit, and, kind of in the face of the narrative that we've always known about him, he's riding Hawkins and Missi and Dejounte. Some of that's predictable. Some of it's not. But Hawkins is showing the requisite defensive effort, the requisite rebounding effort. He got rewarded by staying out there, and then the offense shifted to him, and he just knocks down shots. I think the biggest thing, if anybody had never watched Jordan Hawkins before, watch the sequence where CJ catches the ball on the wing and he kicks it to the corner, and Hawkins misses the first three. We get the offensive rebound, goes back to CJ. CJ again throws it into that corner and says, Hawkins, rip it again. And Hawkins makes the second one because he is an unconscious basketball player.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good word. He's unconscious. And that's something that people have told me. That's a little bit of a difference between Hawkins and Trey. Like Trey, he'll just think about it a little bit more. I mean, Trey is extremely, extremely talented and good, but he'll think about it a little bit more. Hawkins, it doesn't register with him. It doesn't matter. He's just going to keep, I mean, it's just not in his head, and he's not getting in his own head about this stuff, about missing him. I don't think as much. Hawkins is great at attacking off of small advantages. Like if you watch his clips from last night, he got a lot of that offense just by Zion handling the ball and Zion's gravity. And Hawkins' guy is a little tilted towards Zion, and that tiny little advantage is what Hawkins needs to let that really deep three go, or catch the ball, attack off the dribble, one or two dribbles, beat his guy, get into his pull up. We saw both those things last night. There was a nice play in the second half where Hawkins ran like kind of a looping cut with Zion had the ball at the top of the key, and he faked like he was going to screen, and then he went over the left wing and he made one from 28 feet away. It reminded me a little bit of JJ Redick. Like I do think they can do the Zion Redick stuff with Hawkins, but I loved the chemistry between Zion and Hawkins last night. I felt like a lot of his offense came off of Zion's gravity as a driver. And I'm excited to just see those two dudes keep playing together.
Two of them were Zion didn't even have to drive. He just had the ball in his hands coming up center court, takes one step to the right wing as if he might go right, and just throws it to the left wing, and Hawkins stands there, catches it, and goes. That's the easiest offense there is. Just throwing it to a dude that's an absolute flamethrower, and the guy, all he needs is a half a foot of space, and he's going to shoot it. Oh, and it's going to go in. So if that's how casually you can get that three off of Zion, with Zion not even stepping past the arc, that's nuts for Jordan.
One of the skills you develop when you just listen to a million of these NBA press conferences over, 8 years or 9 years or whatever, how long I've been listening to these things, you can tell when it's kind of fake BS praise, because they have to do that sometimes. You just have to give empty praise, because you can't go in front of the cameras and be like, actually, I don't think my teammate's that good. I think he's kind of overrated. And then you can tell when it's real. And I'm telling you, Like the Pelicans' praise of Jordan Hawkins is real. You could just tell it's real. Like CJ McCollum's like he's special. Zion, you could tell that praise of Hawkins is special. I think Willie Green too. I think these people like these important figures within the team like really see it with him. Like he's just got something. He's got that one elite skill, the shot, and then the force that he plays with. Like he's not really going to get tired. He's just going to keep moving. He's got a nice motor. So I've liked what I've seen from him these past few weeks here.
Yeah, he's the guy we were like talked about similar to him coming into the league was like a Malik Beasley comp guy that can run all over the floor, that can get the shot up a lot of ways and wants to, like, is happy to take 8 threes running sideways, jumping sideways, and can make 6 of them. Jordan's not streaky like that, and he doesn't go ice cold. He rarely is going to go like, it's hard to believe he's ever going to go like 0 of 8, and he shoots them with the same level of confidence. So it's more than just the shot. He's one of those high profile motion shooters, which when you play a bunch of guys, when you're trying to space out and you have a bunch of guys that like maybe aren't the most athletic for their position, that kind of need to be standing in a spot, it's really helpful for one of the guys to be running at full speed and need like a quarter of a second to turn and go up.
I think he's a scorer, not a shooter. I think he's a scorer.
Yeah. The only reason he's not a 3 level is because that 3rd level requires him to jump into and through dudes, and he's rail thin. Like that part's just tough to finish. He can do it. He's got the verticality. It's the size and the people he runs into down there. He's got all of that stuff because he can pull up. Like if you can dribble twice and get your shot up as quickly as he does, you're going to score. But yeah, incredible game. And the biggest thing, he's earning those reps. Willie is trusting him because the requisite effort on defense, it is already night and day different from what you saw last year. He is not blowing coverages. He is getting beat sometimes at the arc. Like you get a really strong driver on their dominant hand, he's getting passed up. But that you can live with. You can live with being beaten on a handful of possessions when you need the guy's offense. If he's not screwing up your whole scheme, he's going to have help. You can know, okay, the guard's going to get past you, filter him toward the rim, Yves Missi, somebody clean it up. This is different. This is a rotational player locked in.
Can we talk about our Cameroonian king, Yves Missi?
Yes, we can.
You're waiting. You're eager.
Dude, this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. We talked about this. We did the draft coverage and everything. We've talked about centers in the NBA. Everybody knows this by now. Like we're all dorks. We all follow this. Even good centers aren't good in the NBA, like out the gate typically. And he was a very, very inexperienced, hyper raw athlete. And we were just like, okay, like there's some interesting stuff on tape, like some dribble drive stuff and things like that he did in college. He's obviously athletic. Like that's not a question. He's fast. He can really jump. He's really long. He looks pretty strong. It's preposterous that he plays this well already and that this has happened in what feels like an incredibly short period of time. And it is a floor raiser. Him and Hawkins together are a floor raiser for the expectations that we've been discussing over the course of the last few weeks for what this team is this year. I already feel the need to go back and look at the schedule where I said the highest outcome felt like 49 wins and the lowest felt like 40. All of a sudden, I need to go look back at those games and ask myself those questions again, where I don't have as much of a center question. I don't have as much of a big man question because they feel this dude on both ends. They are feeling him off of screens and they are feeling him at the rim. And he is 20 years old and it is game 2.
Yves Missi's NBA debut against the Chicago Bulls. 12 points, 7 rebounds. Do I have the right thing? Oh, yeah. And 3 blocks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
3 blocks.
3 blocks.
He plays 23 minutes. He checks out of the game with about 4 minutes left, and he gets a standing ovation from the Smoothie King Center crowd. How about that? You play your first NBA game, and the home crowd gives you a standing ovation. I've got a feature coming out on tomorrow, Sunday, on Nola.com about Yves Missi, about his background. I would encourage you guys to go check that out. But there was a detail in there at the end from Jose Alvarado, basically like during pregame warmups before the home opener. Missi noticed that Alvarado got this massive ovation. He was like, "Whoa, man, that's crazy! Like the crowd loves you." And Alvarado, per his recounting, told Missi, "Yeah, they love guys who play hard here." And Missi, I think, already plays with very good effort. That's not a problem. That is a problem with big guys a lot of the time. That's a question you always have to ask. Is this guy just playing basketball because he's tall? And is he going to play hard? I think Missi has that component to his game while he's checking out. And Jose apparently told him, "See, I told you. You played really hard." I thought that was a cool little detail there.
5 blocks in 2 games. Fouls have not been an issue at all.
Yeah,
Like
that's been a surprise.
he has stayed down. There was a rep last night where he gets jumped into and he times it well, stays completely vertical, arms are straight up the whole way, no call, missed bucket. And he was in a vulnerable position. He's falling backwards towards the rim within a foot of the rim. And he stayed vertical and didn't clamp down. He jumped at the perfect time. His innate feel for when to go, when to run, when to jump, it's his instinct is so good that it's remarkable to say that the dude hasn't played that much. He knows where to be. And the other thing it feels like happens when he does get the ball and it's an offensive rep and they look for him and it's not a lob. There's not this like cavalcade of things he's telling himself he has to show you. Like he doesn't need to show you his dribble or show you a fadeaway so that people feel a certain way about him. He knows I've got 2 things and I'm on this ball for a half a second. As soon as he touches that thing, he's either taking a power dribble, 1 step, and he's going up. And that's it. And it's high glass. It's with spin if he needs to. He's going up, and then he's going to try and rebound that thing if it comes out. He feels like a perfect blank slate, a smart hard worker with no bad habits that is just like sponging up the game already.
Here's how much organized basketball, Yves Missi has played in his life. He moved to the States when he was 16. He played at West Nottingham, a prep school in Maryland. He went to Prolific Prep, a prep school in California. He went to Baylor for 1 year, and then he got drafted into the NBA. So this guy did 1 year in a prep school on the East Coast, 1 year in a prep school on the West Coast, and 1 year of college in Central Texas. And now he's in New Orleans playing professional basketball, and through 2 games, playing professional basketball pretty well. I mean, it is amazing to me that he's looked this competent with that lack of experience. That makes it really exciting. The play that really just made me say whoa on Friday night was Simons is coming downhill in the pick and roll going towards his right. It looks like Simons has the edge on him. I'm like, all right, Simons right-handed layup.
Yeah.
Missi recovers in time and just swats it into the second or third row. I mean, I almost stood out of my seat. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, athletically, he is special. He's getting some of the verticality stuff. Fouling was a huge issue in the preseason, and like it's okay. It's understandable. It hasn't been through these 2 regular season games so far. Look, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid to the point where it's like I think they're going to be rough games. Like I do think there's going to be games mixed in here where it's like, okay, he got 5 fouls in 20 minutes. Like I think that stuff is still going to happen. I think it'd be foolish to think it's all just smooth sailing from here. But I have definitely seen enough to say EBC is going to be a guy. I think how he's looked already like changes things for me with this team's outlook. Like I'm definitely looking at this like, okay, if not this year, like Yves Missi is my starter next year.
Yves Missi is your starter next year, meaning calendar year 2025. Like this is now like it's just an amount of reliability we were not banking on or betting on or even hoping for. Like it was not beyond me that he might need to see the G League. That is out of the question. He is plenty good enough. The athleticism and the respect he has commanded in 2 games is so absurd that, like, yeah, he'll have foul nights and we'll need Daniel Tice to step up. But I never wanted, I said this probably on 3 different episodes. I never wanted Missi pressed into a situation where he needed to play 15 minutes. Well, guess what? He has already completely shut me up. He should be playing 20 plus every single night because he impacts them in both directions. Teams are already, he has barely started playing, and teams are afraid of what he does. They are afraid of his vertical threat. They are afraid of him at the rim. They turn away. That's an actual rim defender. And it's just, it's crazy. It's improbable. And it has changed the dynamic of how you view this team. Like if even on the bad nights, like there are plenty of centers. Sharon Jackson has terrible nights where he fouls out. It happens all the time. Even on his bad night, like where he is already, like, is this 75% of what Jared Allen would have been?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We shouldn't get over our skis. Like, it's been 2 games, you know.
But as much as it's been 2 games, this just doesn't happen. So I want to enjoy it. I want to get excited about it. I'm not going to make him an all-star or anything like that. We were desperate. Like the reason that he got that applause when he was in New Orleans playing like that, we were desperate to find a solution there. And he looked like a solution on night 1. And it feels like he's going to be a solution sooner than anyone thought. I was definitely doing the Derek Lively thing as like the optimum outcome is you protect him all year and then you slowly like ramp up his minutes and like maybe he's playing 20 by April. We're already at that point. So I am going to be excited about that. I'm not going to make him an all-star and all this stuff, and he's going to get beat on some nights. I'm definitely watching like night to night these different types of centers he's got to deal with. Klingon was a handful, and more so than Ayton was. Ayton
That's a big
heartless.
boy. That's a big boy, Donovan Klingon.
That rebound that he grabbed like under the backboard and got up and scored and got fouled. Like that was dumb. That was just dumb.
The other thing with Missi that has really popped to me is him as a threat as a roller and how that changes the Pelicans offense and how much different that is, a new element compared to Pelicans of previous years. The Pelicans just did not have the lob threat on last year's roster with Jonas Valanciunas and Larry Nance Jr. I mean, Larry Nance Jr. could do it, I guess. I mean, Larry Nance Jr. when he's healthy is very, very athletic for how tall he is, but Yves Missi is just he's just a whole different beast. I mean, he's 6'11". He's got the crazy vertical. I mean, he wants you to throw it up. And I do think the Dejounte Murray injury, like he's one of the players hurt the most by it because Dejounte Murray is probably the most skilled pick and roll operator the Pelicans have on the roster. Like I felt like those 2 guys found something in the first game. I tweeted the clips. I was like, there was some real chemistry here in the pick and roll. I think Dejounte found him 3 different times for baskets out of the pick and roll. Yves Missi, I think, understands timing, which is an underrated skill for a big guy. You know, when to cut. We were talking about in a group chat today. I was kind of wondering, does a soccer background help him there? That's a big thing in soccer. It's like knowing when to go and that timing element. And I think Yves Missi has that of like, nope, I'm gonna wait. And now is the perfect time to roll to the rim. So I think that's a new element in the Pelicans offense too. Him as a roller to the rim and his lob threat ability.
I'm gonna go a half step before the roll and also say that like I'm like 10 games away from calling him the best screener that's ever played in New Orleans. It's stupid to think about, but when you watch him run as fast as he can, finding guys to put a body on, a second and a third screen, he is creating havoc at the top of the arc to create advantage for Brandon, who we've talked about before. Brandon and CJ do not have this hyper athleticism with their first step or with their handle where they're going to like dribble past dudes. Yves is creating space by screening and then back screening another dude, and he is hunting it. He is racing out there at full speed. He sets it with no motion and then immediately races to the next spot. We haven't seen, I can't tell you the last player that hunted screens in that way. I don't think I've seen that here.
It's been so fun to watch. I mean, guy's 20 years old. You know, you look at the Pelicans draft history since 2021. There were some L's with the David Griffin regime from in 2019 and 2020, but the draft history since 2021 has looked pretty good. There've been some pretty nice wins there. I mean, Trey Murphy at 17, big dub. Herb Jones at 35, enormous dub. Dyson Daniels at 8. Yeah, you could say the Jalen Williams thing, but Dyson Daniels is a useful, productive NBA player. By the way, did you see him hitting the call? Did you see him hitting the call after the Hawks won? You know, Hawks win this game. He started next to Trae Young. And then after the game, like, Dyson, can you do this? And Dyson goes, Caw-caw! I mean, it was electric. He really went for it.
You know what I liked more for Dyson? Because I'm absolutely keeping tabs. Because this is a great fit for him developmentally. Way better than here, because here it's hard to get past Herb. And you had overlap with Najee. You would have had, like, it's the same kind of overlap he'd have had if somehow Javonte Green ends up on this team with him. He goes there where they need a big defensive guard to help protect Trae. And so he's going to get tons of run. And he's finding himself in plenty of space, taking open threes and running out in transition. But the biggest thing, my big criticism last year that I repeated over and over and over and over again, I don't like his mentality. I do not like that he is not aggressive. They show him the rim and he lets it go. Nick Claxton pulled him out of the air in their first game against the Nets on a breakaway, chased him down from behind, hacked him on the side of the head, and pulled him out of the air. It almost went real bad, like reminiscent of Jason Kidd and Gennaro Pargo bad. And Dyson was immediately on fire. Claxton just kind of like stumbles off into the tunnel as if like, oh yeah, whoops, accident happened. Dyson runs up and grabs him by the jersey and gets in his face and just chest to chest with. I've never seen that guy. It's like he left and Najee's soul went into his body. And that's what he has to be. Like, if that's how he plays this season, Dyson's going to hit the higher end of the spectrum for what we thought was possible for him.
Yeah, I mean, I still like Dyson Daniels a lot as a player. I think he's got a very good chance to succeed in that situation. That seems like a good basketball fit for him. There's not as much pressure there. You're right. There's not Herb Jones to compete with for that kind of perimeter stopper defensive role. And then the two drafts post Dyson, Jordan Hawkins at 14 and then Yves Missi at 21. It's looking like a pretty nice track record from this Pelicans front office after a couple of whiffs early on. That's what we need to get it rolling. I mean, we're going to have to draft and develop our own talent in New Orleans. It's not going to sign here in free agency, although Dejounte Murray, really wanting to come here, I know is a trade, but that felt like, oh, that's pretty new, a one-time all-star, like a top, I don't know, 35, 40 player, maybe higher than that. It's like, I want to be in New Orleans. That was really cool. That was a moment. But I like what the Pelicans are doing in the draft the past few years.
Yeah, there are a couple of big misses. They were mostly before this. And one of them, people wanted to comp Missi to this guy. And you can talk about him. We're going to have conversations about him for as long as they're both in the league. Jackson Hayes was a similar bet. He was the same bet. It was the athleticism. It was the verticality. It was the fluid athleticism, the ability to get up and down the floor faster than most of the guys on it, even though you're 7 feet. But Jackson's a goofy dude who really cares about social media and video games and IG models. And that's not what Missi's about. And so far, the results are already dynamically different. But it was a similar bet.
One of my draft theories is bet on guys with one elite skill, and also guys who just you feel confident want like basketball and want to get better and want to improve. I feel like Hawkins and Missi both had that one elite skill thing. I mean, with Hawkins, it was the shooting and like the movement shooting specifically with how quickly he can get it off and, sprint and immediately fire. That falls under that category. Like that was the one elite skill. With Missi, it was just freakish athleticism and like, you know, foot dexterity at 6'11". The guy could just move his feet, block shots. I mean, great leaper at a guy with, this great frame, like clearly a frame for an NBA center, 6'11", I don't know, 250, whatever he is. I mean, just a beast. And for him to be that good on his feet, they both have the one elite skill. And I think that's sometimes where people lose. It's like they don't have that one thing. And then I think the other thing with those two guys is they felt really good about their attitudes. And I think that helps both those guys too.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Like it's understanding what the mentality and the motor are going to look like and collecting the information that you can on background on these guys to find out like how much of this interview that they do with you, how much of it's real, how much of what you hear from coaches and trainers and stuff about them in the process is true to form or just because they like the guy. And sometimes you definitely get you get tons of manipulation in the draft process. Like I'll do this very, very quickly, and I promise I'll get away from it super fast. But we had two teams like essentially lie about Bronny to try to like wash him into being a viable prospect, and they happen to be like his like adopted uncle, and LeBron's marketing partner works with the Suns, so like the Suns and Dallas both like let out that they were interested in talking to Bronny and like thought he was like a real deal player. And look where he went, and look what we did, and it was like a fun dad moment, and otherwise it was a basketball abomination, and now he should be in the G League for the rest of time. The Missi stuff, like he's an authentic dude. Hawkins, like we said this, we heard it from Hurley. Hurley doesn't seem like he lies about a single thing in the world. If he feels a way about you, you're going to hear it. He told us the dude was a killer. The dude looks like a killer. He shoots and plays like a killer. And now he's playing defense with the same level of energy he plays offense with. And yeah, Missi's just a barrel of fun. Like I could do an hour on Missi. I'm so excited. My heart is so warm.
We've gotten this far in the show. We haven't talked about the guy really who hit the game-winning shot in Portland. That's Brandon Ingram. About 4 seconds left. The shot clock's going down. It's going down. I'm sitting there thinking, what the heck are you guys doing? Ingram has dribbled the ball 17 times, hasn't passed. This is such bad process. And then he rises over Anthony
I hate that
Simons,
word.
hits this nice turnaround jumper. Pelicans get the stop, obviously, with Herb and Zion coming up with the block. But what have you thought about just Brandon Ingram in general over these two games here?
I think he deserves a ton of praise. He is coming into a very difficult situation where he does not have a contract in hand. The last time we saw him, he was an embarrassing version of himself. He took criticism all offseason. He was essentially open window shopped and did not find a deal, did not find much interest at all. It is hard to come into a year in those circumstances and think that that's going to start well. And not only has it started well, it has started the way you want to see it. The rebounding effort, the effort to get the ball when it's loose, the effort to just play and hang on defense has been great in both games. In the first game, it's probably not the shot selection you love. They're figuring out the stagger of the two guys. Him and Dejounte have a lot of overlap in the type of stuff they like to do, so it's a little weird. BI's just kind of like out of the play. If they're on the floor at the same time, BI's kind of out of the play on the perimeter. There's some weirdness there. In this game, when there was daylight on a transition three, or there was daylight because he was the second or third guy to touch it, he took it. Some of those threes were huge. His rebounding was huge. And then you get into like, I know it pisses people off that will dribble a clock out and get into a Brandon mid-range, but like it is one of the best shots that we have in terms of knowing that no matter what the coverage is, he's going to get the clean look off and he's going to have a reasonable chance of making it. So it's one of the simpler things to say, I know he's going to get the shot off. And that's what he did. He dribbled the air out of the ball as the clock ticked down and then stepped in his face, took a step backwards, spun, went up, and it went down.
I mean, it was a great shot. Won the Pelicans the game. I'm just not going to complain about wins. I mean, they need to stack wins. There's two really important players out right now. They need to win by any means necessary. That's
I got to
great.
ask you real quick. What do you think would have happened if he missed it? How do you think sentiment would have been?
I don't think people would have loved that shot, but let's not do that. Let's just
celebrate
the shot.
I just wanted to throw it. Like, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I don't think people would have loved the shot either way.
I don't think people would have loved. Okay, we took all these dribbles, and then this is the look we got. It felt like, yeah, I don't even want to do that. All right, so these first two games, Brandon Ingram has taken a combined 14 3-point attempts. He has felt very willing to get them up from behind the arc. I think he took four pull-up threes in Friday's game in Portland. He was definitely willing to get them up off the dribble, which is a little bit of a newer thing for him. I would say the very, very, very early returns on the, hey, Ingram's actually going to take more threes this year narrative is he is. I'm going to keep watching it because I actually think this is one of the more interesting stories of this season. It's like, can you actually change? I mean, he has changed before in his career, but can you become that guy again that we saw the first 2 years in New Orleans? I'm fascinated by that question.
I think so much of it has to do with who he's out there with and what the game is calling for, because you saw when he was looking for points in the Chicago game, he was playing his game and he was getting to his spots to try to get himself going. And that's not how Portland felt. Portland was so much of a scratch and claw game and we were down by so much. It looked like he knew we needed every three we could get. So if they left him daylight, like the thing we've complained about with him for the last 4 years is he catches it on the arc and there's this big old open space. What normally happens? Dribbles in 3 or 4 steps, pulls up there, even though he had this giant football field in front of him and the shot's more valuable. In that game, he knew that shot mattered and he knew they needed it. And if he doesn't make all of them, they don't win that game. If he doesn't take those shots, they don't win that game.
One of the things they're trying to do with him is get him to catch the ball pretty close to the basket. Work out of the post, and you can take your fadeaways. It's like more of a short mid-range shot than like a medium or a long mid-range shot. They're trying to get him to post up almost with a foot in the paint and then attack from there. I think that's an interesting difference we see this year. He's been working with James Borrego a lot. Like those two guys have been putting in work during practice. We see it when we go in at the end of practice. I'm definitely interested to see if his shot profile in general can be a little bit more closer to the basket and behind the arc this year. I think that's obvious. I guess my overall concern with the Pelicans these next few weeks with Dejounte Murray being out is the offense going to look like a slog like frequently, because it was in the first half in Portland. I mean, I have to say after watching that first game, I was like, yeah, it is important to have a point guard. It is important to just have a guy to organize the offense and get guys the ball in their spots. Like this is really nice and great.
The biggest thing to me is like, do you have basketball is a game of flow. It's a back and forth. It's an ebb and flow game. You can have a team that should win by 20 that ends up in too many moments that it loses that moment and ends up losing by 20. And like, that's what this game is. So you see that flow and you can almost feel there are moments in a game, especially in this one, where it felt like, man, if they get this to 17, if this spread gets to 17 or 18, I don't know if it's going to happen. And every time that almost happened, we made a shot. And you're like, okay. And then you get a turnover, like, all right, they're still alive. And then when they started to claw back a lead again, every time they kept cutting it to single digits, it also felt like, don't let them get a lead, because they feel pretty fired up and the defense is locking in now. If they get a lead, I think they're going to win. I think that the thing that I noticed the most about Dejounte in game one, it's those moments, those release valve moments where last year we basically needed them all from CJ, or needed them from like Herb or Najee on like a turnover that like saved us from reckless possessions. All of those were coming from Dejounte in the Chicago game. He was finding the easy bucket for Missi, finding the easy bucket for Tice, dribbling down and getting Kobe White to foul him and getting to the line when we desperately needed it in that game. It would have been nice to have in this one, because I think he would have stemmed those runs more. Zion played a lot of point guard, and in that first half, he was a mess. He just was a mess. He didn't know what he wanted to do, when he wanted to shoot. He looked completely just off. And like, I think I tweeted that like he Zioned for the first time at like the 7-minute mark of the second quarter or something like that. It was halfway through the second was the first time he actually looked like himself. And it was for one play. So yeah, you definitely notice it. There's going to be a lot of like mine and yours stuff with him and BI. That's going to happen. And we know that this team is going to be cause turnovers, get out in transition, get offensive rebounds, create more opportunities for yourself to overcome the rebounding and overcome the lack of the psycho offense.
The last note I've got from this Friday Portland game, with about 3 minutes left, Willie Green went to this lineup of Jordan Hawkins, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Herb Jones. Me and you laughed when Shams Charania said, Herb Jones is going to be the Pelicans' 5 this season, guys. We thought, hey, look, this is just, a way of saying, actually, Zion is going to do this, but he doesn't want to do this, so we're not going to say this. Well, I got to say, Herb kind of was the 5 for the last 5 minutes of that game. I mean, he was the guy who spent a lot of time on DeAndre Ayton, guarding him. Obviously, doing that as a closing lineup is way different than doing that from the opening tip. And I think that was my biggest concern in the first place. I don't know about the viability of doing this from the opening tip, but what were your thoughts on Herb Jones, the 5, during crunch time Friday night?
I mean, the other thing is, it depends who your matchup is. And DeAndre Ayton is not a dude. He's a dude who should play with force and doesn't. Like, he is I'm to the point where I'm like ready to call him like a heartless big. He's super talented. He's super athletic. He plays a really stupid brand of basketball ever since he fought with Monty. And that's probably why Monty didn't like him in Phoenix.
The play where he dribbled the ball up and picked up his dribble right after half court and just like threw it to nobody. And the Pelicans got a layup. It's like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Everybody loved him after he shot like 80% against us in that Phoenix series. And I was like, guys, go back and look at what those shots were. Like, he wanted to shoot. We left 10 to 12 on the elbow open. We left that open and we dared everything else to beat us. That's the shot he took over and over again, and he just made them all. He wants to play that style of basketball as a 5. He can't take a 3 and won't play you at the rim. He's not worth it. He's going to have a bunch of double-doubles this year. He's going to block a couple of shots a game. He's probably going to be like a 20-12 with 2 blocks. He's a losing basketball player. So Herb on that guy who doesn't want to take Herb to the rim and take advantage of the size, because that's not how he wants to play, sure. Guarding him on pull-ups? Yeah, why not?
Anything else from this game? There's going to be a rematch Sunday. I'll be in the building for that. A 3 p.m. Pacific game, I guess a 5 p.m. Central game, but earlier, which I love on a Sunday.
Yeah, the couple things is like just down the stretch when they're trading possessions, like when this is going to be a tight game, you're like, okay, we're going to have to go like shot for shot here. There are some things that just deserve to be like celebrated. And I want to hit CJ again because Scoot, was it Scoot or was it Anthony Simons? I think it might've been Anthony Simons. When he drives right side of CJ and CJ gets that tie up for that jump ball, that's the game. Like, if Portland makes that shot, we're probably screwed. and CJ locks the ball up, gets a jump ball, wins the jump ball, and we go down and score, and it's still a game. That was huge, and he was beaten. Like, he had first step beat him, and he just stayed with it and got his hands wrapped around the ball. The other thing, we called a couple of timeouts down the stretch to set up some plays. One of them was like an intentional, just like draw up for like Zion to go up early and try and like be Zion, and he missed it. I was fine with that. But I liked the fact that in the final 3 minutes, we stopped it twice. We set up a play because the offense was a mess. The first one was Zion. I liked it. He missed it. The second one was an action that started with BI. I think he kicked it over to Herb. Herb finds CJ under the basket, and CJ takes 2 steps, shovel pass to a baseline jumper, which is like the prime spot for BI to be in, and he knocks it down. And I was just like, all right, okay. And that's 2 possessions before we go and win the game. So just, I liked most of what I saw down the stretch in a clutch game, in our first clutch game of the year, where we didn't win any last year, and our clutch addition, Dejounte Murray, isn't playing. So yeah, just shout out to all the clutchity clutchness.
The Pelicans are already battered. It's going to be 2 more weeks before Trey Murphy is back in the lineup. We're looking at 4 to 6 weeks for Dejounte Murray. Nevertheless, the bad news, Pels, persisted, Adam. Thank you for joining me on the Saturday afternoon. We will do this again next week with a few more games to chew on.